G'day, welcome back to More Cowbell, please. Hey, Ryman and I have been cooking up an excellent episode for you today. Today's episode is a corker. It is Nathan Nockels. Here's a tease of what's coming up in this episode.
We got this email from a guy named Louie, Giglio. I just finished it last night. And so just see what you think. We don't have to use it. He goes into, bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, starts singing me 10,000 Reasons.
Okay, let's get into it. This is Nathan Nockels. Nathan, welcome to More Cowbell, please.
So you
Thanks.
Literally have the cowbell.
That's the way I started out.
I love it.
Had to come up with something sticky, right? So for those who are unaware, Nathan Nockels is a producer. I want you to tell me about your life, because actually I know very little about you prior to Passion.
Yeah. The Passion.
So tell me the
records.
beginning, and I especially want to hear the opening times of Passion.
Yeah.
Like what that was like.
Grew up in Oklahoma City, right in the middle. So you were born here in America. No, you were not.
No.
Okay, so Perth, Australia, the average person in Perth, Australia, if I say Oklahoma, they're like, oh, Cowboys and Indians. Got it.
Correct.
You know, so plains, flat. So that's where I grew up. Spent my high school years with a guy named Charlie Hall. Yeah, he was one of the founding voices of Passion conferences, Passion worship conferences. We went to junior high and high school together. We started doing music together, Charlie and I, just in Oklahoma City, just nothing. I remember he wasn't walking with the Lord and he was just kind of doing his thing. But I remember him and I, our senior year in high school, we're sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts in Oklahoma City. And he's like, man, we ought to do like music together. You and me, you know, we ought to like, and I'm like good Christian boy, you know, like thinking in my head, like, yeah, okay, I don't know, maybe. We actually just became great friends. We were just kind of on both sides of the tracks. And then we kind of like hung out together, and then he gave his life to the Lord, and he started walking with the Lord and started writing worship music and all these songs. And then him and I just started doing music together.
What does doing music mean? Like playing live, forming a band?
So this would have been like early 90s. So we were doing summer camps, youth retreats. First Baptist, Oklahoma, Texas would say, hey, Charlie, Nathan, will y'all come and do our summer camp, and y'all lead worship every morning and every night? And then we're like, yeah, we just thought it was the greatest thing. And then we decided, like, you know what? Charlie, you're writing songs, and I love to put music together. I didn't really even know what a producer was. I was
right.
18. Yeah. Let's find a studio in Oklahoma City, and we could like record our songs. And this was our first studio experience. We were like, well, where do you find a studio? There was the thing called the white pages and the yellow pages. And it was a big book with phone numbers and businesses. Okay, we'll get the yellow pages and we look for recording studio. Found this dude and we went to his house. Here's Charlie and I's thinking. We were like, how much studio time do we need to record our 10 songs? We're like, well, let's see, 10 songs, you know, a song is like what? We'll say 5 minutes. So we'll do the song twice. So that's 10 minutes a song. So 10 times 10, we need 100 minutes. So we'll round off to 2 hours. So we need 2 hours of studio time to do our record.
Right.
Isn't that great?
You were just performing it with just like acoustic.
Acoustic
there was
guitar.
no band.
No, acoustic guitar, piano. This guy, we went to a studio and he had an Alesis D4.
Oh, yeah.
Which would have been the rack mount version of like the HR-16 drum machine.
Mm-hmm.
But he was showing us all the snare sounds and all that. We were like, what the? This man is a genius, you know. So anyway, fast forward, we named our band Nathan and Charlie because we couldn't think of anything. We sound like a ventriloquist act. But we did that for several years and we just started developing. So he was writing, there really wasn't like a worship scene. This would have been like mid-90s, early 90s. There was, but our perception as 18-year-olds, when you think you know everything, was like, it was super cheesy. Like, oh, that's like what grown-ups do. And that's like saxophone solos, and which actually saxophone solos are kind of cool now.
It's cool.
I will say. But then it was just like, what? You know, and it was like a percussion. Everybody had like funny clothes on. We're just like, man, we just want to acoustic guitar. And back then it was like Alanis Morissette. We're like, we need like loops, and we need like, it needs to be dirty and organic, and why isn't there any worship music like that? You know, so that was the stuff we were trying to kind of fumble our way through and find. In that time where Charlie and I were doing camps, I started dating this girl. Her name was Christy, and ended up being my wife, Christy Nockels. But I remember we were working on a Nathan and Charlie record, and I was like, hey, Charlie, I was like, man, I'm dating this girl, Christy, and she actually is a great singer, and we should totally have her sing on one of our songs. Our engineer friend was helping us with our records, and you know, they were like, yeah, I mean, you know, we'll see, you know. I was like, no, I think she's actually pretty good.
They're thinking Yoko Ono.
Totally. Yeah. Like she's not going to yodel, you know, during the song or whatever. So anyway, she came in, she sang on one of our songs, and it was like brilliant. We're all like, what? She just elevated what we're doing times 100. Ended up marrying her, and awesome. Been 30 years, so it's great. It was interesting because that Charlie, Christy, and I, it was a seed, and we all started doing music together and eventually created, and this would have been the mid-90s, we were like, well, us three, Charlie, Christy, and I, we need to make a band. So we called ourselves Sons and Daughters. Not to be confused with All Sons and Daughters. They were like, well, we knew y'all were sons and daughters, and we didn't want there to be confusion. And so we were like, we'll call it All Sons and Daughters, which was great. We called ourselves Sons and Daughters. We did a couple of independent records. This one specific record we did, CD, would have been in 1996. There was like 6 songs that Christy and I wrote, 6 songs that Charlie wrote. I produced the record. That CD somehow found its way into Louie Giglio's hands.
You produced the CD.
Yes.
So you had progressed beyond using somebody else's studios, or you were still using other studios, but you'd worked out.
We found a buddy, and he had 2 ADATs and the BRC, the big remote control. Yeah. And we're like, all right. And he cared about the recording of things. Charlie was all heart, songwriter, just wildly talented. But if I were to talk about kick, have enough, you know, whatever, or what should the kick pattern be? What should the hat pattern? Should we put a shaker or whatever? No one in the room seemed to care about any of that except for me. And I kept waiting on other people to be as excited about this acoustic guitar tone, but no one seemed to be that excited. And so I was like, oh, maybe that's my role. Yeah. Maybe he's the songwriter. Christy's the beautiful singer-songwriter, you know, that elevates what we're doing. And I'm the guy that kind of just organizes how we sound, you know, and that was about as far as my mentality went. I didn't think, oh, I'm a producer, and I'll tell everybody what to do. So
this CD gets to Louie Giglio.
Yeah, we get an email. This would have been AOL. Remember America Online?
Absolutely. With dial-up.
The dial-up with the modem with the funny sound when you get on the internet. We got an email. And back then, we got this email from a guy named Louie Giglio. We were like, who is Louie Giglio? You know. And anyway, it's Louie Giglio. And he went on to say, hey, my wife and I are starting this conference. It's going to be called Passion. And we're going to have it in Austin, January of 97, January of next year. He said the Sons and Daughters CD that you and Charlie and Christy made. This is the soundtrack for what Shelley and I envision Passion to be. And he said, I was listening to these songs, and he's like, I had to pull over. And he's like, I just wept. He was like, this is the soundtrack. This is it. Who are these kids? Would you all come? And would you all want to be a part of this thing? Christy's working in a daycare, and Charlie and I we're working at a church. You know, we're just slugging it out.
So this CD's put out independently at this point. There's no label.
Yeah, there's no label.
You're just doing it yourself.
I will say we're dominating the Tri-County area.
Okay,
so we're doing every camp you could think of. Yeah, we're doing Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas. We're doing all the camps and all the retreats.
Now, had Louie gotten anything going by this point? Like, there's no Passion Church. I mean, there's, you know, what's he doing at that point?
He was like the Baptist Student Union guy at Baylor. And he had a Bible study going there, and he was starting to cook up some worship music. He had this thing bubbling up in him that had a heart for like, God, there's more to this worship thing than what we're doing. They were releasing things with their local worship leaders at Baylor, and And then he kind of ran into, in 96, ran into Charlie and Christy and I, like, wait, that's what I'm hearing in my head. And so Louie immediately connected with us on that. And that just morphed into, like, eventually Christy and Charlie and I started heading up the entire worship for Passion conferences. And him and Shelley were just like, they were way down the road, spiritually, vision, all that. He just was and we were just like, that's awesome. We'll come alongside you, and I'm passionate about how things sound, and Charlie's, excited about this. I do remember we went to a couple of the first conferences, and we were just kind of like, we'll do the special music. There was a turning point, and this would have been in 99. Louie sat Christy and I down. I was so waiting for Louie to ask me this, but Louie was like, Nathan, if you could change the worship at Passion conferences, like, what would you do? What would the band look like? Oh, okay, here's what you need. Here's what you need to do. Okay, there's this drummer in Oklahoma City. His name's Trent Austin. You need to get Trent to play drums. This guy named Pat Malone, he needs to play bass. And then Charlie, and this is back when this was a novel thing. We're like, Charlie needs to play acoustic guitar front and center. We need to have Christy singing next to him, and I'll play keys, and then that's the band. And then we'll have loops. We'll have drum loops, And it was like, what? It's
tracks. Wow. Remind me of what's going on, because I'm trying to flip through the Rolodex in my mind of what worship acts would have been happening.
It would have been delirious. It was delirious. So who we were looking at, like, what's going on over there, would have been delirious. And then Matt Redman was coming along up right with us, but just over in England. So there was a whole big surge of things happening over in England. And then there was a surge happening here in the States. But obviously this was 99. So there wasn't, like, internet wasn't just super snappy and flowing, and there wasn't worldwide communication as there is now. But we just sensed things going on over there, and obviously Delirious was just freaking making killer records. We're like, what is that? We want some of that. And we started doing some of Redman's songs at the Passion conferences. I remember Charlie coming in when we were trying to find the right songs for Passion 99. And Charlie came into the song meeting with Louie and Christy and I, and Shelley, and he was like, okay, there's this guy, his name's Matt Redman, and he's got this song called Heart of Worship, and I think we need to do it at the conference this year. We're like, oh, play it for us, and he pulls out a tape or something, and he's like, then he's this other song, Let Everything That Has Breath, let everything. There's that song, and then Better's One Day. He's like, and then he has this other song called Better's One Day. We need to do that at the conference. And so we did all three of those at the Passion 99, and that was the initial pull back the slingshot and throw those songs out into America. It was on that Passion record.
Was that the first record? The first one you'd actually recorded the conference?
I think there was one other one before that Passion record I wasn't involved in. 99 was the first one where Louie was like, all right, here's the reins. We kind of took the reins and we kind of ran as hard as we could. So since then, that went on to like 20 Passion records and a ton, Matt Redman records and Tomlin. I remember Louie saying, like, hey, Charlie, Christy, there's this guy I've been doing some camps with. His name's Chris Tomlin. I think he should come in and lead a couple of songs. God, yeah, okay, cool. We would lead, and then Tomlin would jump in and do like one. He was the special music. He would do one or two songs, and then he would leave. And then he would jump in the next session, do one song. It became painfully obvious, like, why isn't Chris leading more? Like, he needs to be like leading this thing also with us. He stepped in heavily, and Crowder, Redman came over and pretty steadily and started helping with the conferences. So yeah, that was like a 20-year journey with that whole Passion thing.
It's amazing.
It was a wonderful, beautiful time because everything felt so new and exciting. There's a producer in town, Keith Smith, Tasha Layton's husband, plays the Toby Mac. He's awesome, but he kind of came up with those early Passion records too. And
is that right?
Yeah. And we had
He didn't mention. I had him on the podcast.
Oh yeah,
and he didn't mention that.
No, he asked me about, or maybe I brought it up. There was this one drum loop that we had in like 99, and then right around One Day Live, around those records in 99, 2000. And we loved this loop, and we used this loop way too much. We'd speed it up, and then we'd pitch it down, And so it was like, and then the slow songs were, and we would just use this loop for all of it. But I remember Keith asking, like, what was that loop y'all always used? And I was like, it's Spectrasonics, Liquid Grooves, the loop's called Ice Castles. That was the basis for like all the Passion worship songs at the beginning.
Amazing. You said you did 20 records for them, but that's including like artist records and the conference records.
Yeah, we did one every year. And then from about 99 to like 2018, it might have been the last formal Passion record I did. And then squeezed in there were like 3 or 4 Redman records, a couple of Tomlin records. And then obviously Christy's record. So 20, 25, something like that.
Tell me the biggest songs that happened in that time. Obviously, Better Is One Day was huge. For me, 10,000 Reasons was gigantic.
Yeah.
It really went wide.
Usually that's the main one. We had that early run with Passion, which would have been the Better Is One Day, and then Shout to the North and Everything Has Breath. There was actually a turning point in the Passion movement. Louie came to Tomlin, to the Redmans, to us, to Crowder, and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a church in Atlanta called Passion City Church. And would you guys be interested in coming to Atlanta and helping me start this church?
Where are you living at that point?
Here in Nashville, yeah. So we moved here like in 98, 99. Yeah, so all the kids were born here. This was home. So we're like, well, that sounds kind of awesome. Like we get to move to Atlanta with all of our friends and help start a church with Louie and Shelley. That sounds kind of great. So we did. So in 2008, Tomlin moved to Atlanta. The Redmans moved over from England to Atlanta. We moved down to Atlanta. Tomlin's whole band, Daniel Carson, Travis Nunn, Jesse Reeves, Matt Gilder, all these guys, we all moved to Atlanta to help start this thing. So from there, we hit a turning point with the Passion worship records. That's when we started saying, like, the conference was always in January. What if we got together in September and wrote songs specifically for the conference? So that's when we started actually writing songs, and we hit a run where there was like, Our God is Greater. Our God. That one, Lord, I Need You. It's a big one. I mean, there were several like really big songs that happened in about a 4 or 5 record span when we all were living in Atlanta. We kind of stopped looking at like, let's go listen to Redman's latest record and we'll do 4 of his songs. And then, I love that Delirious song. Let's do that song and put it on there. It was kind of like, hey, you know what? What if we wrote our own songs? And then obviously Tomlin was already writing. And then, so we started having this little writers get together. And then, Kristen Stanfield would come in and Brett Yonker. And then we started saying, hey, Jason Ingram, can you come down to Atlanta, get like 15 people and write for the conference? And then Ed Cash came down and it was so much fun. And we had some of our up and coming writers that were in our Passion City Church movement that weren't like A-level writers, but we put them in a room with Ed Cash, and like, hey, let's write a song together. And then they would come out with some amazing song. And there were several songs like that. Matt Maher would come down. He was a huge part of writing, and Jesse Reeves and that whole gang. It was a sweet, sweet time.
Are there any song stories that stand out to you, like ones that came out of that process that you?
My funnest story, and I love this because it's super encouraging, and it was a big lesson I learned. We were working on a Redman record, and this would have been a 2012, something like that. When Redman does, Matt Redman, sorry, I can't call him Redman, you know what I'm talking about.
I got you.
If there's going to be 11 songs on the record, he's writing 40. And then there could be some straggler ideas, but he writes and he writes and he writes and he writes till the very last second. But for most of those songs, when he comes to me and says, all right, I got this song and I got this song, then I'll take that, I'll make a voice memo of it, and then I'll make not a substantial demo, but this could be something. I'll program some drums, some bass, blah, blah, blah. I'll spend a half a day on it. Then I can pitch it to Redman, I can pitch it to Louie and Shelley, and it helps us pick songs. But needless to say, it's a lot of work to make these little demos for not everyone. I wasn't making like 40 demos, but it was like 20, something like that. It was just helpful. This would have been like 5 days before. And I'm running a little ragged, start rehearsals, and we've been going through these demos, just song meetings. And Matt was running a little ragged too, because he had been hitting it hard. Writing, refining. He was running a little ragged. And I remember him coming over to the house. This is when we lived in Atlanta. He was somewhat apologetic. Mate, he's like, I got one more song. Well, I just finished it last night. And so just see what you think. We don't have to use it. It's not, again, we're 40 songs deep. He goes into, bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, starts singing me 10,000 Reasons. I feel like it wasn't any genius part on my end. I think anybody that was sitting where I was sitting would have been like, wait, what is that? Like, that's my favorite song. Matt's reaction was like, really? I was like, no, that's like my favorite one out of all of these that we've been going through. Really? We have to do that song. Okay. So my lesson in it was I didn't have time to make a demo for it. And I didn't have time to come up with a zippy guitar line and a zippy programming and all that. What I had time for was like, we just had to go straight into rehearsal. And I was like, well, I'll just play the I'll just play the piano part. Jacob was playing drums, Jacob Arnold. Y'all just play a thing and we'll throw it at the end of the set. It'll just be a quick thing. Sure enough, 10,000 Reasons became what it was.
From one of the takes where the band, you barely all knew it,
made it out into the world, was that live recording. Did you mix that record?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I mixed 10,000
That's
Reasons.
right, you did. Okay.
So the thing that I remember was, you sending me all the multis, and all the songs are great, and they always were. I think that was probably the second or third record I'd done. When that song came on and the first pass, just listening to it,
what did you think?
I was like, oh, this is good. When that line comes, 10,000 Reasons for my heart to sing, and forevermore. Those lines and just the whole. I don't know what it is. It's the package of everything just came together.
What's fun to think is that was the third single. I remember having the conversations with Shelley and Brad O'Donnell at Capitol, but it was like, okay, this 10,000 Reasons record ran its course. So at the tail end of this thing, I can't remember what let's just put out 10,000 Reasons as a final single, because we've kind of done the arc of this record and we'll move on to the next one. Everything about it was just not overthought. And it was not a result of a room full of people like, all right, what's the perfect worship song that's going to resonate for generations to come?
Well, the funny thing with that song too was it was so underproduced.
Very underproduced.
The whole production flow of it.
Yeah.
But the one thing that was I was thinking this in the bathroom this morning. I was thinking, I've just discovered this podcast called Song Exploder.
Oh, no. I need to listen to it.
Oh, it's great. And I just listened to the one about Everybody Wants to Rule the World, where the guys are talking about parts and are incredible.
Incredible.
And all the different parts. Well, your song doesn't have any of that, but it does have one thing.
Boom, boom.
The three kick hits.
Which I got to say was Redman's idea. And where he got it from was Disney's Robin Hood.
What?
Right, I know. If you go back and listen to like the Robin Hood where like Robin Hood's like a fox, it's like that Disney one from the 60s or 70s or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a song in there, and I don't know if it's the end credits, but I think the Friar's singing it. It's like, or the dude with the banjo and that. And that's where Matt actually got that. He was like, hey, what if we in that moment just do a 10,000 Reasons. So there you go. Disney's Robin Hood.
And I remember thinking to myself, it's so slow. How can this be a hit?
Right. I know. Why I think that's even more encouraging now, even talking with my son, who's 25, and he's in the mainstream producing, and he's in some crazy big rooms. And we have these discussions all the time of all this AI stuff. He just has to kind of ignore it and keep his head down and keep writing music and get better at that. To your point, 10,000 Reasons had no fancy part. Didn't have this, it didn't have that. The original versions kind of sounded like 5 people playing music. I think there was only like 800 people in the room singing the song together. It was a beautiful song. I don't know that there's going to be anything to replace that. Even if AI could directly copy that to the final 1 and 0. I think there's more to it than the 1s and 0s. Obviously, there's something spiritual going on about that. That story to me, it just encourages me.
I think on the AI thing too is AI is fully reactive. It's educated on everything that's happened to this point. But what the heart wants tomorrow, that's much harder to predict. It's not emotionally predictive.
Of course it's scary because it's completely unknown. Mm-hmm. And we're all looking at each other like, what the... And I had this discussion with my son. Don't you think that we're going to be like, in 10 years from now, I'm going to be searching out for music that I know was made by humans. And that's what I'm going to listen to. I just don't feel like the general... I don't feel like I think people are going to seek out music.
Well, I think humans are the curators. You make your 20 song demos for Matt that took you half a day each, or you could have done those with AI in a fraction of the time and just curated the bits and pieces and go, I'm going to keep that keyboard part, but the guitar part's wrong. Let's do something different. Or, it gets you in the zone, like programming a drum part.
Because what you're talking about, a very primitive version of that would be like 20 years ago, you and me going through loops. Because we're just looking for something that's already done that will kick us off and be a diving board. The slippery slope, where I think you would use it and I would use it, and my son Noah, is you use it, that's good, I'll take that. That's good, I take that. So it's just generating ideas. The thing is, if you completely 100% lean on it, then in about 5 years, you're going to be amazing at moving a mouse and clicking. That's what you're going to be great at. And then and pulling together parts, And
the creative muscle is going to atrophy.
It's going to atrophy. So can we find the balance of doing what you said? Throw me a demo, let me pull the best things, and then let me pick up my guitar and a mic and add authenticity to that and replay that part because it's super cool. I wouldn't have thought of that. AI is awesome. And kind of.
So AI is supposedly lessening the more tedious and, kind of mechanical parts of the job and helps us get to our destination faster. But there is something about that process of going through all those loops that has expanded your mind.
Yes.
I used to use assistants to set up my sessions, but what I found was mixing 3 or 4 songs a day, I didn't give each song the love. So now I prepare it all myself. I listen to every track. And by the time I get to the actual mix, I'm intimate with every piece of the song.
You're pretty much there. It's just getting things in that.
I could be argued on this, but I don't know that we have enough creative energy and juice. It's unbalanced to go at the peak creative output all day, every day.
No, I agree.
The tedious parts are helping you calibrate and balance, and you have enough energy to do the creative for a part. Kind of back to 1 song a day, and it's a much healthier for me.
I would agree. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of more of a grown-up thing to say, but did I get better at something today? Did I get a little bit better at something? I hesitate on using templates when I'm starting a song. The idea of having to what was that synth bass called? Crap. And I got to go through, I got to pull it up. I got to kind of go. It slows me. I got to be quick, but then on some of the things, I don't want to have presets for. I remember Paul Maybury, pretty much every year and a half, he just tosses out all the sounds he's been using. I can do that 80%. There's some stuff that's just some of my string libraries, some of my piano library, they're just awesome. And I can't,
they're classic timeless sounds. They're not like a stamp in history. Like loops have a moment.
Oh yeah. Snare samples have a moment.
Snares have a moment.
Kicks and how things are balanced. Yeah. But right now it's how low and fat and tubby can the snare be? It's pretty soon we're just
I'm actually going the other way right now. This song I'm mixing this song for an indie act called Strings and Heart that are just blowing up. They're getting offered deals. They're asking themselves the question, is having a deal worth it? Because what we're doing on our own is just blowing up so big. But they are kind of going the other way. Their sounds are different.
Yes.
And I like it. In Australia, the coveted drum sound at the time, I'm trying to think of the American act that was from Minnesota.
Just don't say Nickelback.
No. No. It was this funky. They just had the one song.
Yeah.
But it had a high snappy snare.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And it was crack. Yeah. And that was the snare sound. Like to
me,
this was
Spin Doctors.
Spin Doctors.
Super compressed.
Yeah, but it was just this little. And I was like, that's the ultimate snare sound.
Yeah.
why would I use anything else?
Yeah.
And so then I start producing. The first thing I was doing as the A&R guy, and I start to discover, no, Americans like this deep, thick, low, almost bass drum snare sound. And I'm like, what?
Right.
I don't know if I don't want to do that. So I had a bit of a fight. Now I'm like, I think I'm going to be able to do the snappy snare sounds again.
It's coming, dude.
I hope so.
The go-to snare when I first started making records, it would have been in the 90s sometime, it was a piccolo snare, but tuned down.
Right.
So you still get the crack and all that, but it was like, 60% rim and 40% actual drum.
Right, yeah.
I was
cracky and snappy. Okay, we got nerdy there for a minute. Think back to the very first Passion Conference. That experience of you've been playing and killing it in the tri-state area.
Tri-county area.
Right.
Not
tri-state, tri-county. And then you walk out onto a stage, because those Passion Conferences, the outdoor, they were huge.
Yeah.
What went through your head and heart at that moment?
It was great in that I'm thinking specifically one day, 2000. That was in a field in Shelby County and right around Memphis. Between 30 and 50,000 people, it's I think it's a bit hazy. Right. Because I think at some point people just kind of came in and they're not going to like stop people. Where's your one day ticket? It was just Louie and Shelley. They're like, just bring them all in. Let's go. I think what was fun about that was all of us on the stage, Tomlin, Redman, Charlie, the whole band, Trent Austin, we're all thinking the same thing of like, what's happening? What are we doing here? And so the name of the game then was like, we're also making a record. My biggest thing to tell the guys was like, don't overplay. You got to have just enough energy, but don't start rushing and going sharp and freaking out and overplaying. It was also a big turning point. I've done a couple of instrumental records. They're kind of very slow moving records with slow moving melodies. They're much for like if you're a book writer. You can do other things while this is going. That muscle that I have to make those records started with like a one day 2000 when I'm up there playing for these hour-and-a-half long ministry times, 2-hour ministry times, or when Louie comes up to speak in front of all these people and he kind of gives me the look of like, and I'm on the keyboard, he's like, which means, keep playing. I'm like, oh man, all right, keep playing, all right. So, he does an hour talk and I'm playing, and then we go into a ministry time and I keep playing. So I'll go for like 3 hours and play, but I got to figure out how to make this interesting and moving. But I started looking at people's faces, and I would look at pockets of people, see what's going on over here, and I would start playing a movie in my head of like, I'm playing just for those 3 people and what's going on there. And so I would do melodies as I'm looking at them. That was a big lesson. The most overwhelming thing that I ever kind of got freaked out about was we did the old Georgia Dome in Atlanta, and there were 60,000 plus. And I remember it was the first night of the first session. Obviously the stage is dark. We're in the round. We have to kind of walk around and then kind of find our place in the middle. But I do remember walking around with Tomlin's drummer at that point, Travis Nunn, looking at each other like, it was slightly scary. I'm just not used to that. I know some of the, like the King Country guys, that's like Tuesday night to them.
Yeah.
It's like
they live for the big.
It was so overwhelming, and it was slightly scary to me. The energy was absolutely overwhelming. The King Country guys, to be able to harness that energy, and Tomlin is the same way, to harness the energy in the room and be able to like tailor it and be like, and curate it and be like, guys, here's where we're going. And not let it overwhelm you and overtake you. Those are kind of the 2 big standout moments where it's like, this is big, way bigger than me.
You left Passion though.
Yeah.
And you came to Nashville. Tell me about what happened.
It was all about money. No, no, it's all about the money. We did leave in 2015, and Tomlin moved on around the same time. Redman kind of moved on around the same time. And what's cool is there were no words that were said, no angry word. There was no falling out or bitter. We were leaving our friends. And there was, obviously, it hurts whenever you move. I think the heart of it, if you think about it, is it was about an 18-year run from like 97 till whatever 18 years is after that. It's kind of like when you have an 18-year-old and they grow up and then they start having like, Mom and Dad, why do I need to do that? I want to start this thing. And then the parents are like, okay, we live here in this house. This is kind of what we do here. The 18-year-old's like, well, but I want to start this, and then I want to do this, and I want to do this. And so I think that's the phase that all of us hit kind of at the same time. We hit this 18, 20-year mark. Christy wanted to start mentoring young worship leaders. We wanted to do a lullaby record. We wanted to do a Christmas record. Tomlin wanted to do stuff. Redman wanted to do stuff. And some of the things we wanted to do didn't necessarily fit inside of Passion City Church Passion conferences. But Louie and Shelley, that's their life, and that's their whole. And so it worked out great for a long period of time to where we could align with them. I wouldn't even say they're our spiritual parents because they're not old enough to be our parents. They were like all of our aunt and uncle, still are. It's so dear to us. But there was a certain time where we're like, for Christy and I specifically, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do a lullaby record at Passion Conference. It's not what the conference needs. So in 2015, we were like, Nashville, all of our kids were born here. We lived here for 9 years, and then we moved to Atlanta for 7. There was just this sense of like, feel like we just need to move back home. As soon as we got back in 2015, moved over to Leapers Fork, and it's great. We loved the house. We immediately created our own label, raised the money, just did everything ourselves, and didn't have any deals with anybody or anything. Did a lullaby record, did a Christmas record because we just wanted to. We're very conscious of, in our passion years, of writing melodies and writing songs that were singable, that were in that worship vein. You mixed our Christmas record.
I did. I feel like I did some of the lullaby.
I feel like you did too. What was so interesting, that Christmas record's a great example. That and the lullaby record were the biggest things we've ever done.
Is that right?
Like not even close. Ain't bigger than any worship record we ever did. And this is the most encouraging thing. There was a question that I think we asked ourselves when we left the passion world. What can me and Christy do that Tomlin can't do? Can I write a better worship song than Matt Redman? No. Can I produce a better and write a better worship song than Jason Ingram? Probably not. But what can I do that maybe is not like first call on his talent list? Be it Tomlin or Ingram. Christy and I are looking at each other like, well, we love making beautiful music. We love lullabies and we love Christmas music. And I love orchestrating and I love big fancy production and I love beautiful. I stay awake thinking about those things. I don't necessarily stay awake thinking about worship melodies or worship lyrics. Those aren't the things I ever think about in my normal life. But I produce them and I love it and it's great. My lesson when we came back was like, we immediately did the lullaby and the Christmas record. And we were like, you know what? 12 people is going to love this Christmas record, you know? And then you mixed it and it sounded amazing. And it went on to just be the biggest thing we'd ever done. And the lullaby record was the biggest thing we've ever done. Since then, we own 100% of it. Those things were the seed of our actual like retirement fund. And it all started with like, I can't write a better worship song than all my friends. But when Redman wakes up, he falls out of bed and he's writing pretty amazing worship lyrics. Tomlin, when he rolls out of bed, he can write a pretty amazing worship song. That's what they do.
That's what I've noticed is the thing they became very successful at was the thing they didn't have to try very hard at. Yeah. They just did them. They worked out what they were.
That's exactly what it was. It's a tricky, slippery, hard thing because I meet with producers and talk with them just about getting started, whatever, encouraging them. It's kind of like a rich guy telling you, well, money's not everything. My reaction would be like, well, that's easy for you to say because you have money. So for me to tell someone, follow your heart, only write songs that's in your heart. Worship leader guy's like, yeah, I also need to pay my mortgage. And I find when I write very corporate singable songs and the church sings them, CCLI picks it up and there is a piece of paper in the mail, has a number on it, that's a check, and I can pay for my kids' school and food. So I know that there's a balance there and it's very nuanced. What Christy and I can't do is we can't neglect either. We can't neglect worship music because we love worship music. To say that I'm not the world's greatest worship songwriter is totally fine. But there is one little thing that I do well. And to your point, maybe I need to spend like 80% of my life really working on that, get better and better and better at that. And maybe that will turn into something. But to spend my life on that, I feel like I'm gifted 25% at writing these kinds of songs. And I spend 100% of my life on that. And I'm neglecting all this thing that maybe I'm naturally gifted at.
You need to feed that whole part for the other 25 to work as well. You need to do all of that stuff to have the balance. It's like I need to prepare my sessions. And see, there's an engineering nerd part of me that enjoys all of that. Yeah. And it's the lowest paying part, but it helps me do the other bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just looked up your Spotify before you came in. I was playing that song because I noticed you're the most popular, the high stream songs.
Yeah.
Or whatever I was just listening to. It's the green.
Oh, the good. That's the newest green one.
Dude, they're all in the like 5 to 20 million streams.
Yeah, the green one's our newest lullaby. And Ainsley, you'd be proud of me. That's the first thing I've ever mixed myself.
Oh, you mixed it yourself.
I
well
mixed
done.
it by myself.
It sounded great, by
You were
the
like,
way.
I have a few notes for you, but...
No, I've got no.
It's a little boomy and dark, but...
I'm listening on my phone speaker.
I know. I'm kidding.
I certainly wasn't listening from judgment.
No.
I was just curious. I was like, I thought songs like, Waiting Here for You, Let There Be, I thought some of those things would have been on the top of the stream numbers on your Spotify, but they weren't.
Yeah.
It's all the new record.
Which goes to the point we're talking about, which can be encouraging for other people. Again, it's easy for me to say, but I struggle with this every other hour. We have to find the thing that we do. Write the music that is in Christy and I. If you're a producer, a mix engineer, a songwriter, an artist, no one hears music like you do, and no one hears music like I do. And obviously, we're the sum of everything, of all of the input, all the music we listen to. How it comes out, though, is completely and uniquely me. So there are many times I'll pull up one of your mixes. I'm like, I get inspired by like, how does he get the bass, the low end is just like, it's just so there. Like, what's he, and it inspires me to like run off and like try to figure out what's he, and I come with my stupid convoluted way of like doing that. But then there's some other kid. How does Nathan get his low end so tight? And so, and it kind of goes on and on and on down.
And you do have to A/B with the world. And I think I've gotten derailed with this. Back in the day when everybody called me for everything, I'd be dealing with producers who've been around the block. I would get this list of notes from this guy, this list of notes from this guy. And my mind was full of their preferences.
Right.
I would be trying to make things that I didn't understand. Like I didn't understand it from a personal level. I allowed their notes. I started losing sight of what I liked. It's like that deep snare sound thing. I learned American snare sound, but it wasn't my favorite. And guys would come back to me, that snare's amazing. How did you do that? And I'm like, I don't like that at all. That's not my vibe. That's what the producer wanted. And I think from a mixer's point of view, your job is to give the producer what they want, get their vision with your skills.
No, that's interesting though. You would lose sight of like, well, what do I like?
Well, and the reason people hired me in the first place, I think.
Because of your taste.
Because of my taste. And I started letting them push my tastes around and I lost sight of what my own tastes were. Yeah. And so it was less part of the mix. And then I was starting to do mixing that wasn't what I understood intrinsically. And so I feel like I started making worse mixes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And some of the competition understands that thing better than I do.
Right.
Mixers are creative in there as well. But I guess I'm applying that to your producer thing as well. And this whole discussion about doing what is you.
Yes.
Especially if you're a writer and a producer where the creativity is all on you.
Yeah. I'm at about a 60-40 ratio where 60% of my time is spent. What is your vision? What's the vision for the song? How does this hit you? You don't like that? Okay, how about this? Do you like that? And then 40% is like the Lullaby record, King Who Never Sleeps is what it's called. That is 100% all Christy and I. And that's me just heart first. And then even as far as like going all the way to mixing it, beginning voice memo to mixing it. If we can do those records and keep our overhead super duper low, we can be super duper risky. Mm-hmm. And then the more personal, if we write the songs, we record the songs, we mix the songs, I start to feel a bit invincible to critiques. And it sounds weird, but this is how I hear it, and I love it. If someone comes up and says, well, I don't like it, I don't like that song, it's kind of like someone coming up to me and saying, hey, I don't like your nose. I don't know what to tell you. This is me.
That's my genetics.
Move on. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm just the way God made me,
yeah, I'm
sir.
just the way God made me, sir. So there's a bit of like invincibility. Now, the other side of that is when I'm making a record for someone and I'm constantly referencing like, oh, am I as awesome as this? And no, I'm not. So I'll keep tweaking and I'll keep A-being like, okay, I'm not as awesome as that. And I keep trying to, we need to do that. But
yeah, absolutely.
If I'm copying and I'm like, oh, they did a ba-da-da-da. So I'll go ba-ba-ba-bun and I'll kind of be it. You know, I'll kind of do what they did, but not really. And I'll rip off everything. Then when someone critiques that, it hurts more.
Yeah, interesting. This record you just made that's doing super well, it is all you. It's intrinsically you. But I put to you that you couldn't have made that record without the last 25 years of your life.
Yeah. And I do this analogy to young producers. It would be kind of like someone was like, I want to be a mix engineer. So obviously you can go onto YouTube and it's all there.
Yeah.
You can learn how to mix records. But it would be like, I want to live in Paris and I don't want to just be a tourist. I want to live there and I want to be like in it. I want to go to the bars. I want to know this person. I want to be part of the culture, part of the subculture. I want to be in it. So I'm going to go on YouTube and learn French. Well, you'll be able to get there and find your way around. But the only way to get way into the culture and learn the slang, learn this street, this part of town, they use this word for this. And this side of town, they use this word for that. You know, and you don't know that until you move to Paris and you live there.
Right.
And you know it backwards and forwards. Then you can start twisting it around. Same thing with our production, to your point. You have to mix records for 20 plus years. Then you can start bending and breaking all the rules and like screwing around with stuff and tearing it apart and rebuilding it.
Like you said, when you were young, you thought you knew it all. You know, at 18, right?
Sure.
I can do it all, right?
Sure.
There's something about that audacious kind of arrogance, right?
Yes.
That frees you to do stuff.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, what I was talking about, all those people giving me all those notes. Like the dog being trained with slaps, you know, like
right.
He becomes more timid as he goes along.
Yeah.
And, you know, we start out with this unrealistic optimism and then we get older and we get this realism, but the realism tamps down our ability to break out and be experimental. So, I mean, I'm super proud of you for making that record because it's creative at this point in your life.
Right.
So that's why it's so fantastic that you've done that. It's kind of inspiring.
It's a dangerous place to be, though, when someone comes in and they'll play me a worship song. They'll be like, yeah, I just want to, you know, kind of build and be super epic. And, you know, and I'm like, okay, no. I know what you want. You know, and then you do it, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, that's it. You know, and internally you're like, all right, throw one more on top of the pile, you know. But the idea of, like you said, the audaciousness and then sort of the fearlessness, sometimes I feel like I know too much, and that's not a good thing.
No, I completely agree.
It's like I need to unknow things, which makes me pull up a different EQ, you know, pull up different sounds, don't use that compressor, whatever. Sing, do the vocal with this different mic, cut the guitars with this thing. And I wish I had the budgets on some of the records I do to just invite different players, young players to come in and play. Obviously, budgets are different nowadays. And
absolutely.
I end up, it's pretty much me and myself and the microphone, and we just kind of make it happen. Beautiful things can happen that way, but I end up recutting acoustics 10 times on a song. I would say that's probably day-to-day my biggest battle. Is I've made probably thousands of really good sounding songs. And I've made hundreds of really good sounding records. And I've made 3 great records that are like special, that are like different. Tim Hughes, When Silence Falls.
All right. Okay.
That would have been 03, 04.
Wow.
I would put 10,000 Reasons in there. There's a thing going on. I don't know what it is, but there's a thing, you know. And I look back on those, and we weren't trying to do anything, you know. It was, so my point being, I've made a lot of good, and I know how to make a song sound good. I don't know how to make a song be great and special. Either I lay back and make really good music for the rest of my life, or I lean forward and I fight for great and special, make people go, what is that thing? And what were you doing? Just have to fight for that and not let myself get lazy, because it's easy to do.
Testimonials of people had their life affected. Are there any that stand out to you from anything that, you know, you've worked on?
Dominant stories, the one that the first popped in my head, obviously are connected to 10,000 Reasons. I don't know the details. I remember Matt telling the story from the stage multiple times. There were these men on death row in a foreign country. I can't remember where, somewhere in Europe, firing squad country. These men, 3, 4, 5 men, walking out up against the wall, singing 10,000 Reasons. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Standing up against the wall, went to meet the Lord in that moment, singing that song. And I know Matt probably could write a book just on that song and the testimonials, but the song that I have any connection with, that one always kind of sticks out, like, whoa. These 2 Lullaby records Christy and I have done. When we say lullaby, I think our biggest reaction from people is like, well, they're not lullabies. Like, I love them. I have college kids. I was at Onyx Coffee, downtown Franklin. College kid is taking my order. He's like, you know, tall coffee, whatever. And he's like, hey, are you Nathan Nockels? I was like, yeah, you know. He was like, hey, I just want to tell you, I listen to that Lullaby record every night. He's like 20, 21.
Wow.
You know, he's just a kid.
Yeah.
So we always say it's like lullabies from like, you know, age 0 to 100. You know, it's just we all need, there's more songs of rest. So we've had many stories of kids being born to this record, and then lots of stories about we were in hospice or at the hospital. My mother was slipping away. She's 80 something. She's slipping away, and we had your Lullaby record just on loop, and it ushered her into the presence of the Lord. And to have any connection with the most sensitive and most intimate parts of people's lives, a pretty huge gift. And it also puts in perspective my neurosis and my neuroticness for how to EQ an acoustic guitar. You know, it's just like, it matters, but it doesn't matter. You know, it's like, make sure the song gets across.
Yeah.
Job one. Make sure it's a great song, and then make sure the song is translating.
Embarrassing stories, things that went wrong.
Probably my favorite story, and this just constitutes what an idiot we all are in the studios. I was mixing a Passion record. It was with a guy named Tom Lonnie. You remember Tom?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We had the whole session up. Tracks 1 and 2 up top was our mix 1. So what we would do, we would just like, all right, mute our mix 1, and then let's keep tweaking. Then we can just kind of jump back to mix 1 and see if we're beating it. Are we beating mix 1? Or are we losing our way? So we go back to mix 1. All right, yeah, we're beating it. This is great. So we keep tweaking. This is probably 11:30 at night, and
of course, when all the best decisions
best decisions are made. I mean, bro, we are so deep into tweaks. We're like, oh no, that's it, right there. You know, that's it. You know, and then we're like spinning out delays just on the slightest. We're EQing the final beep of the delay. You know, we're just so in the minutiae, and I don't want to exaggerate. Tom and I are probably going for 25 minutes of just deep tweaks. This is going to be the perfect mix. And he's mixing, doing one of the tweaks. He's closing his eyes. We're all, you know, we're just like, oh yeah. And he stops. He's like, Nathan, he's like, we've had the mix 1 stereo track soloed this whole time. We haven't listened to one thing we've been doing for 20 minutes. We were just hearing mix 1 and we spent 20 minutes. Oh, dude, that ride was perfect. And we weren't hearing anything we were doing. Oh, dude, can you like make that verb just, you know, a 0.5 seconds longer?
So here's the question. Did you flip and then listen to what the changes you had made?
Bro, I know.
So embarrassing.
It pulls into question your entire existence on this earth. Right. You're like, what am I doing actually?
Education-wise,
Yeah.
you just did high school.
The high school, went to Oklahoma Baptist University. I got a music education degree. It was with a vocal emphasis. It wasn't like a band. I was going to do like choir. Most people would say this about college. I learned how to learn. I learned how to work hard at something that I didn't want to learn. And I learned how to read and comprehend things. And I do have a dash of dyslexia, so it was a challenge. I would say that musically, I did actually get my degree. It took me like 7 years. It was during the time where we're making all these Nathan and Charlie Sons and Daughters records. We're making those, doing our camps, dominating the Tri-County area. But I'm trying to finish my degree just out of principle. I would say the biggest thing that I took away that I used, because I don't really read music, I'm just in the numbers world. The biggest thing I learned was my conducting classes and how to stand in front of a choir. We had to do this 3 times a week. There was 40, 50 people in the choir. We had to teach them this piece of music. So we're having to do the mechanics of doing this thing. And then also having them sing, conduct, play the tenor part because they kept messing it up, and listening to the whole picture. And then being able to be like, okay, baritones, you guys were singing an A, and these, it's actually A flat. Look at your music, blah, blah, blah. There's your key change. So learning how to multi kind of do that, and then learning the mechanics of conducting. Fast forwarding to when I was in front of 60,000 people in the Georgia Dome. I'm freaking out. The opening of that whole first session was this giant orchestral piece. There was a whole orchestra. It was a lot of people and a lot of instruments. And I'm in front of 60,000 people and I'm conducting.
And you've arranged this thing?
It was a classical piece, and I can't remember the name of it. And we rearranged it and put synths up under it and blew it up and made it bigger than life. I had to stand in front of all these people, all this orchestra, and in front of the audience and conduct this thing and be like, all right, and then bring the cellos in and then the horns, and, how do I bring them up and keep this going? And it was the whole doing this thing. And, but I was like, I love it. It's the first time I've ever used this since college, So that was probably I would love to go back and retake some of those classes that I didn't pay attention. As far as harmonizing, they would pull up a piece of classical music and you would need to analyze the chord and write the chord above it. That's a 4 diminished 7 flat 9 or whatever,
Yeah, right.
I wish I would have dug in deeper on that, but I did just enough to pass my classes.
Was there any theological training component?
Oh, we had to take Old Testament, and then we had to take New Testament. We had to take some of those fundamental classes.
Okay, so you did have some of that.
That was about the extent of it. And my whole music career has nothing to do with lyrics. I'm married to Christy, who's an amazing lyricist, but she doesn't really play anything. I've always been connected with people that are amazing lyricists, but they need the gifts that I have. I'm starting a record in a couple of weeks, and we were going through his songs yesterday. And I admitted to him, I said, here's the deal. When you play me your songs, I respond and make my comments to your songs, and then I have to remind myself, oh yeah, and there's lyrics too. I forgot. I always react melody, chords, melody. Okay, and are the lyrics good? And if they're bad, I know it immediately. If it's like, God, you are God, and God is God of my life, I'm like, I can do better than that. Go, get out of my sight. I've learned to not beat myself up. It's just how I'm wired. And then the lyrics will get there for sure.
I'm just wondering if there's anything you would look back on your life and go, that was my magnificent defeat.
I think of records and many songs that I produced where I had the attitude of internally, it's not a great song, but I'll produce it and I'll elevate this song because of my production. And I'll think of a great guitar part and we'll get a good vocal on it, but it's not a great song. Today, I would never do that. If it's not a great song, it doesn't need to go on the record. We're not doing it. Or I'm going to be like, hey, you got a better verse than you. If I were to look back, I can't remember all the records I've worked on, but I know there are many that are full of not great songs because I thought I could save it with my snappy production. My snappy production matters to an extent, but it stops. It's the song and the vocal. It's just, that's what's gonna go? And is the song clear? Does it go all the way through? Defeats, I would say it'd be more like our records that just kind of fizzled out, that we put a lot of effort into, remembering I should have been more like, I don't feel like the song's there. Let's go back to the drawing board on this one. And
like you feel like there was some fail on your part because
on my part,
you didn't sense that about the process.
And I sensed it, and I thought that I could save it because of my snappy production. And that's not true. It's just the song is the song. And I didn't stop the process, or I didn't slow down even in pre-production. I should have slowed down the process.
I mean, 10,000 Reasons in many ways is the lesson in that, because you didn't get a snappy production on it.
None of it.
At the beginning at least.
Yeah. We got a simple piano part because that's all we had time for. And we got Matt Redman's Disney Robin Hood drum beat, and then that was the whole song. That's great. It's kind of a good little roundabout full circle. That was my lesson. Probably the biggest, and then we won a Grammy for that.
That's right.
Song, and it was a huge song. But it's the song that I worked on the least. I mangled it the least. It just was like, oh, it kind of is what it is.
The great song wins.
The great song wins. And making sure my production it's the wings on the song. The production can't be the engine on the song to pull it up and make it fly. Right. Song's got to fly.
I've got to tell you a really embarrassing story.
Yeah.
When Matt played downtown at the Belonging.
Yeah.
And I think you were playing keys on there. I'd never met Matt. And we had done 10,000 Reasons, and we did the record after as well. I was shocked at how short he was, and I said that out loud to him, to his face, my very first
You're
meeting.
So short.
Yeah, basically.
And then internally.
Basically, and my wife, who's a good Southern woman, she's like, what the heck? What are you doing?
Why did you say
There's so many positive things you could have said to Matt, and that's your opening? I'm going to finish it out by shaking your hand. It's been good. I've loved working with you over the years, and thanks, bro.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. I certainly loved having Nathan over to the house, reminiscing over as many things, and it's kind of a producer masterclass, wasn't it? Ryman, you got anything to say about it, buddy? No? All right. You can go. Don't forget, tune in next week for Prince Muller. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bells, all that stuff. Okay, till then, make sure you put good things in your ear holes. Over and out.